Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're going to take just a minute or two before we kick off with Tom Hector from Harris Real Estate for this wonderful webinar. Just to make sure that everybody's kind of in and everybody has kind of settled in as much as possible before we kick off, because I don't want you to miss a minute of this. It's going to be a fantastic webinar, and we're really looking forward to it. I want to thank you all for joining us today, and we're going to kick off shortly, probably in the next minute or two. I'm just going to see how the numbers go for people entering the webinar. Looks like our numbers are fairly steady. A few people coming in still, just a few of those stragglers. Fantastic. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate that. Wonderful. All righty. Now, I wanted to let you all know that this webinar is being recorded and it will be sent out afterwards. So if you had to duck out or duck back in or take a call during it, don't worry. This whole webinar is being recorded and will be sent to all registrants as well as available online on customer.realestate.com.au later on this week. My name is Tara Christensen. I'm a digital strategist with realestate.com.au. Just a few housekeeping items before we kick off. We are going to have a question and answer at the end. So if you have any questions that you have for Tom, then please put them into the chat or also into the Q&A. Either one, we do have somebody who's monitoring that and will send that through to us, and hopefully we can address all of them. We will try to do that. Please also stay online because we do have a poll that's at the end of our webinars, and we'd love to get some feedback on how useful you found the material, some of the content, and so that helps us moving forward with some of the other information that we have. It's great to see some of the newbies joining us as well. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking that time today. Before I introduce you to my two guests today, I would like to start with an acknowledgement of country. Since 1995, REA Group has operated on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung peoples who have cared for and protected it since time immemorial. As the business has grown and established offices around Australia, we're grateful for the custodianship of the traditional owners of country across all our lands and recognize their continuing connection to lands, waters, and communities. We pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders cultures and to elders past and present. Now, in this session, we are looking forward to learning basically how to use all of the resources of realestate.com.au and conveying that to your vendors and using that to become a successful agent and using that to really grow your business. I think we have several newer real estate agents that are on this, which is fantastic because you couldn't probably have a better mentor than Tom Hector to learn from on this. So we're really excited for that. And a number of you had sent through questions prior to this webinar, and we want to thank you for those. For VPA specific questions, we actually have a recording of the Tom Panos VPA webinar that was from last week, and that's live. It's going to go live on customer.realestate.com.au in the next week or so. There's a lot of ground that we're going to cover in this webinar, and we hope that we can address every topic. But if not, we're going to try to entice Tom to come back a little later on this year as well. You'll notice that there's actually two other smiling faces alongside me. Luke Dorr is a senior account partner with realestate.com.au, and he's primarily worked in and around Melbourne as well as the far north coast of New South Wales. Through videos, you'll also hear from some other customers of ours, active principals and agents around the country, how they're using certain features and products and realestate.com.au as well. But we are especially honored today to have live and in person Tom Hector, property consultant with Harris Real Estate in South Australia. With a career founded on the premise of growth, learning, and sales success alongside Phil Harris, kicking off at Harris Real Estate's official opening in 2010, it's been an upward trajectory for Tom ever since. Somewhat a young veteran, Tom's well-recognized and respected career pedestals him as one of the company's and Australia's highest performing agents, awarded auctioneers, and leading professional mentors. Thank you so much for joining us, Tom. We really appreciate that.
Pleasure to be here, Tara. I'm excited to share some insights this morning. So should be a
Fantastic.
good 45 minutes together.
Yes, I think so. So, just to kind of refresh everybody's memory on where we are with things, Australians are definitely online. We know that for sure. There's a majority of people are using the internet to find information, and they're spending almost 7 hours a day on the internet. And we also know that they're looking at real estate. On realestate.com.au, we have a unique audience. A unique audience means a singular person, so not just return visits, but one person coming to the site, and they're doing a lot of research. So both on realestate.com.au, but also on our sister site, property.com.au as well. We also know that they are looking specifically at not just properties, but also people on realestate.com.au. One of the things that the research team at realestate.com.au has discovered is that in a selling journey, a seller usually spends up to 10 weeks doing research themselves, self-educating before they even reach out to an agent like Tom. So we know that they are doing a lot of self kind of research and self-knowledge before they even reach out to you as an agent. And so that's something to keep in mind, is that people who are actively in a real estate mindset and are active on realestate.com.au are a really highly targeted audience and are really kind of exceptional. Well, they are exceptional when you are looking to advertise your listings. So I'm going to first hand off to some other principles on a video that we have, and then I will pass it on to Tom and Luke.
When I sit down with my clients and I explain the different marketing options we have available, I give them realestate.com and also a number of other opportunities to advertise. Realestate.com is my most expensive place to market, but it's the biggest audience we get. The nearest competitor is 1/10 of the price, but we get 20 times the amount of buyers. When you're starting out in the marketplace, I think it's important that you need to put your properties in front of as many buyers as possible. And the place with the biggest audience is realestate.com. They've got over 10 million viewers every month. You're a small fish in a big pond, and I feel that you need to stand out in your marketplace. When it comes to selling your property, more buyers means more offers, which generally means a better result. When we're selling a home, we want as many buyers in the home, so we create competition and get the best price possible. Realestate.com helps us get as many people as we can through the door.
I'm working through our marketing schedule. When we get to the REA, it's my instant comment is that 80% of our online inquiries come through REA, and then the rest are all made up in that next 20%. So it's just a given that they're on it, and they're potentially leaving some of the bangers they don't. When I'm sitting with a client, I'm asking which buyers do they want to cut out. And when you're cutting out buyers, you're cutting down the price. And so it's very, very important to each and every marketing campaign that we do.
Now, we've heard from others about the largest and most engaged audience, but Tom, tell us, how do you use the audience and the numbers that realestate.com.au has to sell to your vendors?
Yeah, to be honest with you, in Adelaide, probably South Australia is bucking the trend compared with probably the Eastern Seaboard, but the opportunity ratio from other platforms in South Australia is very, very, very minimal. So I've just basically monopolised it in respect saying in my marketplace, if you're not on realestate.com as a Premier Plus listing or a Premier listing to be the absolute least, you're not going to maximise your return to your potential marketplace, because every particular client that's buying a property here in South Australia is on the REA platform. And I'm finding at the moment your audience is getting bigger and bigger here in South Australia. So I'm an advocate for your brand in a big way. Why? Because it's very user friendly. It's got a great audience, and more importantly, every potential buyer and seller is on there. So I'm fortunate that your market share allows me to get the product sold at a lot quicker rate because, there's very few other platforms in Adelaide that are getting the audience compared with realestate.com.
I love that. Yeah,
That's a great
I was just
endorsement.
going to say, I love that phrase that to maximize the return. And I think that's a language that a lot of vendors can understand, and it's consistent, Tom, with what I'm hearing as well up here in northern New South Wales, and also my time in Victoria. And there's a sentence that I know a lot of agents have adopted to try and help sell realestate.com.au in the living room, because sometimes we talk about such massive figures. And I know Luke from Elders on that video there mentioned that over 10 million people, and you showed some stats, Tara, to talk to 11 million individual people a month. That's not views or hits or traffic. That's individuals within Australia. 11 million individuals within Australia in 1 month.
And if you're wanting,
on
if
average.
you're wanting to build if you're wanting to build a long-term brand as well, it's amazing how many appraisals I go to, and probably open inspections as such. Like, I've got my junior agents coming to my opens with me, and then some people, like a couple of weeks ago, it was interesting that he goes, "Oh, you're Tom Hector. Oh, you're Tom Hector," because all he's seen is my face on realestate.com for the last, say, 6, 7, 8 years as a Premier Plus. And because I sell in about 3 or 4 suburbs and I'm doing 80 to 100 sales a year, that effect just builds your personal brand. And then obviously from there, it's free marketing in regards to how the customer looks at you. So it's amazing how over time, it's like anything in life, the gradual effect, but you also got to be consistent in what you sell. You can't just sell a standard listing and then sell a Premier Plus and then a Premier listing. You've got to be very consistent. So every single one of my properties is a Premier Plus. And then the day before the auction, we're obviously notifying, and we're doing another e-brochure out, bumping that up the list to ensure that we are getting maximum return for our clients and anyone that's clicking on that as well.
How do you convince your vendors to do that, Tom?
Again, though, it probably comes back to not so much realestate.com. It comes back to one fundamental factor, which I want to talk to you about today, which is trust. How do you build trust? Well, it's frequency. So when I started out in this business, as you can probably appreciate, you haven't got a database. You're pretty much a cold start. So as you can probably appreciate, for the people listening today, year 1, year 2, it's about survival. Survival is getting a listing, getting a sale at all costs. What the fee, what the marketing is, well, as you can probably appreciate, it might not be the best, but you've just got to build that. But it comes back to a couple of fundamental factors what I want to talk to the listeners about today. And I talk about this with my team and the whole company here at Harris, is relationships will always win. Relationships will always win. So for me now, not being arrogant, but the way in which I sell my marketing, it's very, very easy because most of my business is warmer business. It's warmer business because I've been prospecting that client for a long period of time. So in a nutshell, for the people listening today, you've got 0 to 5 points of contact. You've got 5 points of contact to 10 points of contact. You've got, say, 10 points of contact to 20 points of contact. In your first 2 years of your career, 0 to 5, they don't know you, they don't like you, they don't trust you. So when you're conveying that message to them in listing a presentation, you have to be a very good lister or you're not going to win that piece of business. But as you can probably appreciate, if you prospect every single day and you build frequency and build trust with them, then that allows you to build a stronger relationship with that customer. So for an example, yesterday, I got 5 people that rang me from past clients and referrals wanting to sell their house with me. But that's 13 years down the track. So why does that message convey back to your realestate.com today? It conveys it because you can sell such larger volume of the product or the audience maximizer, or it's much easier because there's a trust factor. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Well, I think honestly that ties in beautifully with I was about to talk about agency marketplace because people buy people, and I think that's kind of that's pretty much what you're talking about right here is that people buy people. That's one of the things that we use in the agency marketplace on realestate.com.au is that people
Sure,
find information about you, but also profiles as well
sure.
on you. And I know you have an extraordinary profile with excellent reviews that are on there. We'll talk about that in just one moment. But this is really one of those places where you can start to stand out, start to put yourself out there, and really draw attention to yourself so that people will start to buy into you. We've got a quick video, of course, with other people who have used that. And then, Tom, I'm going to throw it right back to you to talk about your reviews.
Sure.
Having your profiles perfectly positioned for your potential clients is very important because they will do a lot of research online before they actually make that phone call. We're in a regional town. We get the benefit of people sort of getting referrals and repeat business through conversations, but those a lot from my understanding, consumers will go to the online platforms like REA way before they call you to try and they might watch you from a distance to see what you're selling, if there's something similar. So, if you've got runs on the board from past business, that's, I think, a good place for them to come and have a look. Leads that I get through REA, I get a lot of them. I sell quite a bit in my market. It's to me, it's business handed to you on a platter. I think that is so important. We invest in REA and they give back. And with the leads that we get, we ensure that we're nurturing those leads like any other client coming from any other platform or referral. So it's for us, REA is becoming a bit of a one-stop shop for not only helping my staff or my team understand where we're at, but also, where our clients come from.
Now, you have how many reviews now on realestate.com.au?
I lost count.
I haven't checked at the moment, but it is like about 340, I think, 5-star reviews. So I think to be around that kind of figure, but I've got a strict process around how that works. And as you can probably appreciate, time allows you to get more reviews because the more houses you sell, right? For the people listening, you got to start with some. So every time I sell a house, I'll send the text message out on a link and they just got to click the link and fill out the review. I'll also send it via email, and then 7 days later, it'll go out again as a friendly reminder if they haven't done the review for me. What I'll also do is I'll speak to my professional assistant, Kylie. If that review hasn't been done and the friendly reminder goes out, I'll also send them a nice, thoughtful text message. Hey Matt, I just wanted to let you know I really enjoyed selling your home. I know time is of the essence, but if you could spend 5 minutes giving me a nice review, it would mean the world to me. Regards, Tom Hector. So I'm just very particular, but I want to make it a personalized message as well on the friendly reminder. So then on the second time round, they normally will come back and fill that review out. It's worked obviously wonders for me. Yes, in a nutshell, I win lots of listings from my reviews. It's amazing how many people ring me saying, hey, I saw that you're very active in Ross, Trevor and Newton and Paradise. I've actually read a lot of your reviews. You've got very consistent reviews based upon your personality. I'd like you to come and consider looking at my house. So absolutely, my goal is now to get that to 400 by the end of the year. And the best thing about that is you can't change those reviews. They're honest. And that's really important because honesty is the best policy when people are looking for their next real estate agent.
And they kind of there's no surprises, is there, either when you walk through the door, because they've kind of seen who you are already from people's experiences with you already, and then you walk in the door and you are who you are, and that consistency as well builds some trust as well.
Definitely. Most people, though, don't have a problem with it if they've had a good experience with it in regards to filling out a review for me, because like I mentioned to you before, and I want to keep reiterating this, and this is why sales is so important, frequency builds trust. And I want to emphasize relationships will always win. my clients are not really my clients in 2024. My clients are my friends. Like when I ring my clients now, I speak about so many different aspects of life because I love asking questions. I love what I do, but at the same time, most of my clients now I know through somebody else, or they've been on my database for such a long period of time. I've built that relationship with them. So for all those people that might be thinking, how do I get to where Tom is today? Well, unfortunately, people don't want to do what's tough, and that is by literally getting on the phones from 8 o'clock until 12 o'clock, 5 days a week, and actually getting 20 to 30 connects out and building those relationships with their existing customers. Because there is clients now that will feel guilty if they don't sell their house with Tom, because I've been in contact with them for such a long period of time. I'm playing the long game.
So, Tom, what a lot of agents who are new to the game may not understand is that you have the ability on REA to request a review from both your seller as well as your new purchaser. Do you
Absolutely.
request reviews from both of those parties for the one property?
Absolutely.
And if so, do you have a different approach for them?
Yeah, so realistically though, I don't deal a huge amount with buyers because my team are done with buyers, so they'll try and get a review from them. I'll always say get 2 vendors though, so if a vendor's got, I'll also send it out to both those vendors so I can get 2 reviews that way. And then absolutely, now the buyer, normally I'm doing a review for a buyer though, in exactly the same way as a vendor. But again, it's just the buying experience of what they're going to talk about with me. And we've got a very, very good system at Harris or in my team to ensure that our clients get a good experience. Now, 9 times out of 10, absolutely they get a good experience. Last week we had an issue with a property where the owner didn't leave it in a great state, but there's always 1 in 100 that will always happen. But we're very adamant about meeting the buyer at the property, giving them a nice bottle of champagne or a nice basket to ensure that when they want to sell that home in 3 or 4 years' time, absolutely they'll come back and use us. So it's all about the experience, I think. And then, like I keep emphasizing today, like realestate.com is such a proven player in the marketplace. It's easy if your client trusts you, right? It's easy to sell a Prem Plus. It's easy to sell anything with realestate.com because your customer is looking there and your audience is so big, and you've got the monopoly, not just in South Australia, but Australia as a whole. And it baffles me to think like how many people I speak to every single day of the week. Maybe it's a dinner party, maybe it's a friend's house, and they're always shopping on realestate.com. They have no intentions of wanting to move, but they're shopping on what house prices are doing. They might be reading a few blogs. You'd be amazed how many people are looking on your website, but realistically may have just bought their house 6 months ago. They got the forever home, but they still keep in contact with sold prices because they want to make sure they haven't paid too much for it, or they want to make sure they've got some uplift in the price. So it's credit to obviously realestate.com in what you built in such a great platform.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
something to just add to that as well, Tara, before we jump on to the next section. So something is becoming a bit of a trend that I'm seeing with a lot of agents as well is that they're understanding now that exactly like Tom says, you build frequency to build the trust. And there's a lot of agents now who have identified the fact that you can reply to these reviews. So once you have requested and received a review, you can respond to it and respond to it publicly, so that when the next vendor comes along and sees that agent's profile, they can see that that agent is not just the sort of person who is going to get their commission check and sail off into the sunset. They're still willing to engage with that person, even after the fact that the transaction's taken place. So if there's one tip to take out of the ratings and reviews, I definitely encourage you to do that.
Only
100%.
2.5% of reviews every month are responded to on or replied to on realestate.com.au.
Yeah,
So you're automatic 1%er right there. If you use that. Now you may have heard Tom reference Premier Plus or Prem Plus several times already, which is fantastic because that was a beautiful segue into some of the offerings of Premier Plus. And Luke, did you want to talk a little bit more about this since you are deep into this all the time?
Yeah, absolutely. Just be careful with how long you give me the microphone for, because there is a fair bit of meat on the bones with this one, Tara. But look, it's in my perspective, it is the only way to market a vendor's listing, regardless of which suburb or market you're in. And I say that hand on heart. My parents just listed their property last week in regional Victoria, and they didn't have a choice as far as I was concerned. And the reason that is because again, it lends itself to what Tom was saying, earlier before. You want to make sure that you can leverage that audience and try and get as many eyeballs on that property as you possibly can to drive competition. And the more competition you get, the higher the sale price. So there are a number of features that are on the screen there that you'll see. The main one at the top being the fact that with a Premier Plus listing, it will remain at the top of the search results and rotate to the very top every 15 days. And it will stay as a Premier listing until it is either sold or taken off market. You get other really cool features like the ability to land in our buyers' inboxes through the 2 e-brochures that you get as part of that Premier Plus listing. You get a listing bump, which is the ability to manually push that property to the top of the search results. And you can do that once within the campaign. And I'm very excited to say that from the 1st of July, we are also going to give transparency on postcode reporting, which can identify not only who these buyers are that are actually inquiring on the property, but where they're actually coming from geographically as well. So stay tuned for that when it drops on the 1st of July.
That's really exciting. There's quite a bit here, isn't there? And we'll talk about Audience Maximizer as well, just a little bit, because we did already get a question on Audience Maximizer as well, but we actually have a whole section just for that. But first, we're going to hear again from some other people who are using Premier Plus before sending it back to Tom.
And I'm selling realestate.com, and the reason we use the Premier Plus package, I'm explaining to vendors not only do you get increased visibility, but it's also targeting people who have been looking at that sort of product. With the Premier Plus listings, you will get 20% more inquiry. 20% more inquiry means more people that will come through your inspection, more people that will be competing for the property. And there's an old saying in real estate, the more people that walk through the front door, the higher the sale price.
Now, Tom,
that particular dialogue he just mentioned there is exactly what I speak about all the time. Frequency around 20% more people in the marketplace are going to look at that property, which means more buyers, means more offers, means a higher price. I sold my house last year. I didn't sell it personally. My colleague sold it, but I used obviously a Prem Plus, and we had huge exposure, 12,000 web views in 15 days on market. So it was highly contested. We made sure we marketed the property really aggressively, and it absolutely worked to a T.
That is amazing. And you've told us previously that you use other pieces of Premier Plus, effectively listing bump. When do you normally use something like a listing bump?
So the day normally before an auction. So it'll go back to their e-brochure the night of. So we've got an auction tomorrow. The listing bump will go out today. So it basically works to a T. So those buyers will get notified, making sure they hopefully attend the auction tomorrow. So always the listing bump goes out the day before the auction. We do run our auction campaigns very quickly. Here they're only 15-day campaigns compared with probably interstate where it's a bit longer, but we find it works for obviously us. Being honest with the audience listening today, we don't really use the coming soon button on realestate.com. Why? Because when we launch the property on our platforms being REA and we've got brochures, signboard, I want to make it as easy as possible for the buyer to buy that home and the owner to sell that home. So I'm very transparent in the way I'm running my business. So my strategy is very clear. I'm absolutely particular about land size, about building size, about making sure the land comes up in the front page of realestate.com. It's my absolute bone of existence. When I see a property hit the market on realestate.com, it's on the front page, it hasn't got the land size or the bedrooms, bathrooms, and icons correctly. So transparency for me is probably my point of difference. Everyone can run their own business effectively. You do what you want, but for me, I want to make sure transparency is absolutely key. And it works well for me because if you go and call Tom to sell your house, you'll get a straight deal. You'll get a straight deal.
It sounds like trust and transparency obviously are two major factors of your business and who you are as an agent. But I also hear a lot of times about your processes and your systems. Do you have a system or process about pitching Premier Plus to a vendor?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got obviously audience. I've got some really clear instructions on, like that agent spoke about before. I forget his name, but it spoke about how many buyers clicked on this particular campaign versus this being a standard listing. So I've got some case studies of my properties. in my back shelf that I've obviously sold via different mechanisms in the last 12 months. And then I'll just talk about the frequency, about the click rate in that first 2 to 3 days is absolutely critical, because your buyer hasn't been looking for 1 week or 1 month. They more have been looking for 2, 3, 4 weeks. And I also talk about the mathematical buyer versus the emotional buyer. So absolutely, I sell the features of higher click rate means more buyers. More buyers means more offers. And then more importantly, I also talk about how many people have an ID of realestate.com. They're tracking what their property's worth. And then I talk about e-brochures a lot as well. E-brochures are important because when they're going to be scrolling and checking their emails, they're going to see e-brochures come out. Oh, I forget that property. I should go and check that one out again. You know what? I might go to the auction tomorrow.
And so I just really kind of want to really quickly go into difference between a mathematical buyer and an emotional buyer.
I talk about that a lot at my listing presentation, because the difference between a mathematical buyer is between 10 and 20% in regards to an emotional buyer. And I saw that firsthand with my house last year. So I'll give you the case study, but my bank valuation came in at $2.2 million on my home in Erindale at 3 Torrens Avenue. I had very few comparable sales, very few comparables. There was other houses that had sold in the area around that 2.1, maybe 2.3, but they were bigger land, but older builds. I went to auction with it. I got an offer before the auction at 2.3 million. Ended up selling it to the same buyer who offered me 2.3 at 2.615 at my auction. So it's a classic example of, you put mathematics into emotions, you talk about the supply, you talk about the demand factor, and as you can probably appreciate from there, emotions run wild. And that's why all I talk to my clients about every single day, I talk about giving them the chance of maximizing their price. All I want to do for you, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, is give you the chance of maximization of the price. Now, absolutely, you can sell it with a standard listing. You can put it on the market tomorrow. There is no question, if you put this property on the market for a cheap price and you put it on the market with a standard listing, the property is going to sell. But if you were to employ me, and I've got an absolute DNA about wanting to maximize your price. Maximizing your price means maximizing the exposure. And if we take shortcuts, we will never know if we've actually got the best possible price.
That right there, I think, is gold. So
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah. And I look, I love that. And this, the conversation around, the mathematical buyer versus the emotional buyer, and how to actually try and get both of those buckets sorted. A lot of what we're talking about, obviously, Tara, is, in the living room when you're there winning the business, which is wonderful. And it's Tom's expertise, and it'll be incredibly helpful. The one thing that I think, the people on the line would love to hear is the fact that the Premier Plus, will not only help when you're there in the living room, but it will also help get you into the living room. And when I say that, I'm talking about the exposure that it will provide when that property actually sells. And I'd ask the people on the line, when was the last time you went to realestate.com.au and went to the sold section and did a search in your local suburb? And I would say that if you're not on Premier Plus, you're not getting that sort of exposure with the sold listings that you've already transacted on.
Definitely.
You take one of the suburbs that you operate in, Tom, like Campbelltown as an example, that gets over 8,000 views just in the sold section alone every month. So you're close to 300 views every day, 300 times a day, someone's searching in that suburb. And if you don't have a Premier Plus listing and you don't have a Premier listing in that sold section, you're just not going to get that exposure to prospective vendors to get you in the living room to have those conversations that Tom's articulating so well.
And
another
seller leads today, sorry to cut you short there, but a lot of seller leads today come from sold section, because people have seen I've sold something in that area, and they'll request a market appraisal through that section. So again, radically transparent, right? Out of all the 100 and probably sales I've made, you can look on my profile now, but there's probably 3 or 4 or 5 properties in there that haven't got a sold price. And that's only because the buyer or the seller has said no to that. So I'll never, ever, ever say, oh, would you like to disclose the price of the buyer or the seller? I'll do it. And if they say take it off, I'll take it off. Because again, I want to make it easier for prospective vendors, buyers out there in the marketplace looking at prices. Now, I just bought a house. As I mentioned, I sold my house. It went in the sold section 10 minutes after I sold my house. I then, with the buy, when I bought my house, right, and it's very particular, and you probably know about this in South Australia, but nobody north of $2.5 million wants to disclose their price. I was like, everyone's going to find out eventually, right? So my psychology is you can go on realestate.com and see how much my hold's selling for. Like, it doesn't bother me. So I don't know, everyone's got their own analogy of that, but I'm of the opinion, you know what? Prices makes it easier for customers to do their research.
Yep, and there's a lot of research around that, and we could definitely dive down that rabbit hole if we wanted to, and maybe we will at the end of this. But one of the other features of Premier Plus that we haven't touched on that also provides some of that exposure, though, is that audience maximizer side of things. And if you it's been a while since you've maybe taken a look at this product or used this product, then I would invite you to take another look, because there has been some updates that have been made to this, and it really is about finding that quality engagement over the quantity necessarily. So instead of kind of a spray and pray method, really working on that engaged and targeted audience that are actively in a real estate mindset in and around the areas that you are looking for. And of course, along with branding listings, of course, there's also branding you that goes along with it. And so quick video, of course, before we have another discussion about this.
How I explain Audience Maximizer to my vendors is it's essentially the digital letterbox drop. They're putting it in front of a number of different buyers in different places without them even knowing. When a vendor says they don't want to spend the extra money on marketing, I tell them the number of benefits that it involves. Would you put your house on the market and not put a for sale sign? It's also a common objection we get. Once you start taking all these important parts of the marketing away, you are just limiting your buyer pool. And I feel like when you're selling a property, you need to open up that buyer pool as much as possible. And I feel like Audience Maximizer is not one of those products that is going down the drain. It's something that's getting in front of buyers.
The cost of $399 is a minimal cost in the return you're going to get tenfold. It's not even, it isn't questionable. Like I would prefer that you didn't invest money in other parts of the marketing than not invest in this. As I've mentioned before, when you're selling your biggest asset, you want the most exposure. So why not invest in such a critical tool?
It's interesting because I've got a meeting with my account manager, Dan Harris, on Thursday to talk about AMAX and my new financial year goals around what I want to sell with realestate.com and the new products that are coming out. So I have used AMAX in the past and I've had great success with it because it's very targeted. I do some social campaigns here internally at Harris. We've got our own internal branding with, but there is absolutely no question. They're telling the absolute truth. For $399, it's a very small investment. And what I do love about your platform, again, which I want to reiterate to the people listening, is that you're so targeted in the people you communicate that with. So yeah, it's a cost to do that, but you've done so much research to know who to filter that data to. But you can elaborate on that if you wish.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, Luke, did you actually want to explain technically what Audience Maximizer is, since we keep talking about it?
Absolutely, Tara, and our product people are going to love hearing this when I technically explain it. But the easiest way that I've had agents that I deal with explain it to their vendors is to ask them the question, have you ever been shopping for a product online, whether it's a watch, golf clubs, a car, and then a week later or 2 weeks later, that same product finds you when you're on a different website, be it Facebook or Instagram or news.com, whatever it might be. And generally speaking, most people have had that experience. And then they say, right, if you can take that example and apply it to real estate, what we're going to do is put your property in front of buyers that have looked at very similar properties to yours within the last 60 days. Because we know that in the last 60 days, they've been engaged with those sort of properties, and they're highly likely to want to engage with yours, given the fact that they've seen similar properties. Now, those properties might not be in the same market. They might not be exactly the same price, but they're going to be a similar bedroom, bathroom configuration in a similar suburb in a similar price range. And exactly like Tom said, to have it highly targeted and actually go and attract those buyers and not wait for them to come to the site, means that it can have incredible results. So, like Georgie said in the video, for $399, to be able to know that you can just go after those buyers straight away is an incredible benefit.
You might want to talk about the impressions as well. You've got different price points from my understanding. You can do 10,000 impressions, you can do 20,000. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, you're right, Tom. And I'd encourage the viewers to go and have a chat to their account partner to work out the different options that they've got. But you're exactly right. You've got different ranges. What we're now doing though is we're moving to a click-based model, which is fantastic because historically we would guarantee a number of impressions, which is great. But with those impressions, you don't necessarily know how many people are actually going to click through to the listing. So to take it one step further, we've said, okay, with these different campaign sizes, we are now going to guarantee you a certain number of clicks. And with those number of clicks comes different variations in the price points. But yeah, another iteration of Audience Maximizer that we're really excited about.
Now, Tom and Luke, we've had a question come in about Audience Maximizer, which either one of you can answer or maybe both. How long after a listing is live would you activate Audience Maximizer?
Yeah, my strategy's always been when I've used it in the past between that. I love it in the first 7 days. I always do it especially that was before Prem Plus, probably Prem Plus. I was doing this probably 12 months ago. It's up to you though. You can do it maybe 7 days after your Prem Plus goes live. What do you know from stats, Lukey? Do you know much about that in regards to what you're seeing out there in the marketplace?
Yeah, I do. And generally speaking, those first 2 or 3 days, you're going to get a lot of activity on site anyway, because it's going to trigger e-brochures, it's going to trigger alerts. So the market's going to be alerted in the first 2 to 3 days. I think you're dead right. I think the first 7 is the best time to do it. And my encouragement would be probably day 4 or day 5 of the campaign, just as it starts to taper off a little bit, send out the Audience Maximizer to then trigger a lot more engagement with the listing from there.
What kind of in your process, Tom, where would you put like Audience Maximizer when you're explaining it to your vendors? Would it be when you're explaining the entire marketing campaign? Would it be a little later on? What kind of language would you use?
Always the marketing campaign. And again, it's a bit like an insurance policy, the old dialogue around insurance policy. You take out insurance on your car, you take out insurance on your house, insurance on maximisation of the price again, and exactly what that client just said about how you've been, I bought some grips for my gym last week, to the CrossFit gym. I do CrossFit around the corner here. I bought some new grips. So what's coming up in my feeds at the moment? All these grips, right? Exactly the same as exactly what we just spoke about. So when people are going shopping out there with regards to looking at houses in certain price points, it's a really targeted approach. And I think it's definitely the modern letterbox drop, because we know print's dead, right? I think Audience Maximizer throughout the next 3 to 5 years is going to be the #1 priority when it comes to actually trying to build your brand and build the customer audience. Because yeah, we're finding in particular at the moment, more and more people are utilizing Audience Maximizer for that exact reason.
Awesome. Well, I know we've talked a lot about a lot of different products today and a lot of different information that's today. All of this information, you can see there's a QR code on the screen at the moment. And of course, all of these, this webinar will also come out to you as well. So if you don't catch the first time, you can the second time, but it's also available on the customer resource hub as well. So we've got how-to videos, we've got webinars just like this one, this is where this webinar will be found as well. Articles, best practice guides, tips and training. So if you do have some of these tools that are already there, then these are some of the other tools that you can find out more information about. And there's also in the chat, there's also a link to that customer resource hub as well. But it's time for questions, which is very exciting. This is one of my favorite parts because we never know where things are going to go. And I'm actually going to hijack the questions because I actually have a question myself before we move into other people's questions. Your systems and processes are amazing, right? They're part of the structure that has allowed you to be who you are today and to continue to grow. And my question for you is, how did you even get started, like putting all of those systems and processes together? Like, how does that happen if you're a newer agent?
Yeah, so we use a platform called Airtable. So for people listening, you want to consider that program. It's very, very effective, and you can build a just listed checklist. You can build a just sold checklist. You can build a marketing checklist. So we've got a certain amount of steps. So when I sign an agency agreement, which I'm going to do today, because I'm going to list a house in my core market of being Ross River, I'll then put that on my assistant's desk, and she'll follow the checklist to ensure everything is obviously done effectively. We've then got our sales support department. Our sales support department allows us to obviously go through the listing bump. So on her notification after 14 days of being on the market, it goes, yep, click the box into the listing bump. So it's just about basically having an itemized list of actions of how that's going to take place over a certain period of time. Because if you don't have a system or a checklist, it gets lost in transition and then you can't scale. So for the people listening though, like it depends on what you want in your business. You might want to make 30 sales a year and work part-time. But if you want to sell 30 Premier Pluses a year, you are going to build a strong market presence. Where I'm doing about 120 sales a year personally, plus my team, so about 160 sales. But that 120 sales in a core market with 120 Premier Plus listings, you're starting to build that really big effect based upon your photo being on realestate.com in the buy section every day. You're having really big sold prices. You also got obviously lots of auctions. I do lots and lots of auctions. So it comes back to what you want to do and how you want to build your brand. But yeah, absolutely. You've got to have a clear system, and you might want to use it out of Excel, Airtable, whatever that may be for you, but you need to have a very clear system in place.
Part of that system, one of the questions that's just come in is, how long after a listing is live do you activate the second manual e-brochure?
About 7 days. No, I'll do it after 7.
Yeah, that's I mean, 7 days is a good option, and I think it can vary from market to market as well, Tara. So I think, you know, in some slower markets, you might want to keep that one up your sleeve. In
and that's
option
exactly
markets,
what I want to emphasize. We're in a false economy right now. The market's so strong, right? So I keep talking to my team about the marketplace in Adelaide is so false. It's a false economy. We're getting 3% capital growth a month at the moment. Like, it's out of control. There's panic buying going on. But in 2018, we were begging for buyers. I was begging people to come to my opens, right? That's when you can make sure that e-brochure goes out maybe day 14, day 20, because at the moment, days on market in my marketplace is like 10 to 15, or maybe 12, whereas like in a normal market, it's 30 to 45 days.
How do you condition your vendors with prices and marketing campaigns and those kinds of things? Is it use me and that's what you have to do, or is there a little bit of leeway, or how do you approach that?
A couple of factors. I would never use the word condition. It's educate, because I'm educating that client around what they actually want them to do. And I use obviously some specific dialogue. So in regards to vendor management right now, there's always the price the market's prepared to pay. There's a price you're willing to sell the property for. If we can't get those two prices to come together, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I get it. We don't go ahead and sell the property. But whether we cross this bridge today or we cross this bridge in a couple of weeks, I hate to say this, but there's probably a bridge we have to cross in relation to the price. We can always work with low offers. We can't work with no offers. But what I do want to emphasize for the people listening as well, I use my Ignite app every single day. So education around vendor management is click views. So how many people have saved the property? How many people have viewed the property? How many people have SMS or emailed me? And then I'm showing that to my client every single week in my vendor meetings. So for an example, I've got a property at the moment. It's had 7,000 web views. It hasn't got a written offer. We all know the price is too high. So very much around data driven. Data is critical. And then articulating, especially articulation around why the buyers may not like that particular property. So I can appreciate, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, you want $865,000 for the property, but the market is clearly seeing stats around the $800,000. There is absolutely no question though, the buyers walking through the front door of your property have got a budget of $865,000. So it's not the budget that's a problem, but it's the value. They're not seeing value based upon the living space being too small, based upon the land size and how much work the property needs doing to it. So again, you've got to put your thinking cap on. Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, just drop the price. No, I'm not going to drop the price. You need to tell me why I need to drop the price. Does that make sense?
I loved something that you said at Eric when we had a discussion about this webinar, which is part of that whole process that you just went through right there. which was you said, I position as there may be a difference between what you want to hear versus what you need to know, and I'm going to give you what you need to know.
Exactly right. And like I went to a listing presentation last, I think Tuesday night when I got back from ARIC, and I said to my client, I said 1.4 to 1.5. She goes, I had an agent here at 1.7. I just, you know what, I went for the jugular, because at the end of the day, I'm at the stage in my career now, I need to work with less people because I've built an effective brand. And her daughter, who's 22, was like very research in realestate.com, done lots and lots of research on me. She goes, you're a very good auctioneer. I've seen you at a few auctions. And I said, when I put my head on my pillow tonight, I want to tell you what you need to know opposed to what you want to hear. And right now, I can easily tell you 1.6 to 1.7. But when I go to sleep tonight, I want to put my head on the pillow knowing that I want to tell you the truth. And the other agents are charging you a lower fee. They're charging you a higher price because they're desperate to win your business. And if you want honesty versus what you want to hear, well, Tom's the right person to do that. Anyway, I'm now going back for a second appointment next week with all my trades to try and convert that property to the market. I haven't won the business yet, but you know what? She's buying that in because I've sold so many case studies on what I've done in the local area. And you've got to play that bigger picture as, you know what? You are going to miss. I missed one the other week where I told the client too little. What happened? The market's going up so much. It's sold in a week. There's $20,000 out the window, but it's a long game. You play the long game.
Absolutely. In I guess for transparency, somebody has asked if it would be possible to see the checklists that you have created in your Airtable for your process.
No problems. I'll email it through to you. No problems.
Great. So we will
a whole just listed checklist. That's fine.
Fantastic. Then we will pass that along as well when we send out the webinar recording as well. I mean, we've covered quite a bit here, haven't we, today? There's been all kinds of things. We've got a poll that's up about how valuable you found this webinar. That we would love for you to take so that we could see it. I personally, of course, think that I'm not allowed to vote, but if I could, I would say extremely valuable because I always learn so much when I listen to people who are as skilled as Tom in what they do and in the industry that they're in. I think we've pretty much covered pretty much almost everything that people were talking about, getting through all of your communication techniques and some of the ways. But really, to me, it comes down to three things: trust, transparency, and those processes that you've got in place, and using all of the resources that realestate.com.au has available to them.
There's probably one thing I want to emphasize towards the end of this webinar today, though, is that I keep talking about this with my team here at Harris Real Estate, right? Everyone's got, like, for an example, plumbers have got their vans, they've got their tools. Electricians have got their vans and their tools as well, right? As real estate agents, we've got one thing. We've got our words. So if you don't practice your words, you are going to struggle in this business of real estate. You can prospect for 3 to 4 hours a day, but have a listing presentation of a 2 out of 10, you are going to get eaten up and you'll never list property. So I hope you can hear from my last 45 minutes of being together today that I'm very particular in the way in which I talk. There's no ums, there's no ahs. I've got conviction. I know I'm confident in what I say. So again, customers buy that. They buy your energy and they buy your skill. That comes with time. But when I was 18 years of age and I finished school, iPhones were just coming out. I went to Dick Smith's, I'll never forget it, and I bought a dictaphone. And I used to record my listing presentation on my dictaphone. I used to record my weekend callback. So that's where become an amateur turns to a professional. So when you actually go in the lounge room, you know exactly what to say, what to convey to win that piece of business. Too many people literally go to a listing presentation, don't do enough research or don't have enough ability, and they wonder why they can't list more properties. So it's our skill is our words in a big way.
I think that knowledge and that confidence, especially in everything that you do in your business, is extremely important. And I think that's a wonderful way to end this webinar. I want to thank Luke, of course, for Wonderful help here, but especially to Tom. Tom, we even had feedback. Thank you, Tom. Always amazing hearing and learning from you, a true leader in the industry. And I couldn't say that better, could I? So if people are not...
If you have any questions about it in the next couple of weeks, or you want any dialogues from the audience listening, by all means, happy to share them as well, because I started out as just an 18-year-old person that wanted to have a crack at life, and now here I am 15 years later, and I still love what I do. I absolutely love the thrill of the chase. I love working with realestate.com, and I love meeting new people every day. But at the end of the day, if I can pick up a couple of things all the time as well, I'm always looking at getting better. I'm not perfect, so I'm far from perfect.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, Tom. Gold, absolute gold.
Thanks,
Enjoy
Tom.
your
Thanks,
Tuesday.
Tara.
Thank you.
Thanks for dialing in,
guys.
everyone.
Cheers.